Okay, so today we're going to talk about Advanced Thema or AT and Advanced Thema Framework or ATF. And we're really going to concentrate on the color management in ATF. It's a question that comes up a lot. There's a lot of confusion around it. I want to show you that it is standard brick settings. It is standard. There's nothing to be confused about. The only difference between standard brick settings and what we do is the way we create and manage the colors using AT, which makes it an awful lot easier than using the standard bricks UIs. I'm going to show you what I'm talking about and how that actually works. We're then going to show you some utility classes that make use of those colors as what we're calling color sets. So to get started, basically when you import ATF, you use this ATF framework importer or AT framework importer. And you've got some global colors in here which you can switch on to import. I just toggled them all. You only need one. The reason we put those in there were all just sample palettes that you can switch between. You can simply create new ones, delete them, add them, whatever you want to do. But this is just a simple way of starting, and I think it's okay to have them there anyway. So that's just basically toggle them all on, or toggle on just one or two of them, and then you're ready to go. So I've already done that, so I'm just going to move on. So what does that actually do when you toggle them on? Up the top right, if we click on the color manager for AT, we'll see we've got that first one here is AT framework. That is the default. And you can see on the right hand side, it is enabled. If we click on the drop down, we can see we've got a few others. We've got a contextual one that's coming in AT 3.1.7. That's going to be included in the set. We've also got a green, red, nature, and purple that are all disabled. Okay. If we look at the AT framework, we have primary, secondary, neutral, black and white, and we have a prefix up here, which is AT dash. I'm going to talk a little bit about that too, because there's also a lot of chatter around changing prefixes and not liking prefixes. I'm going to show you why they're a good idea and why we've chosen to stay with AT dash for the AT framework, colors and variables, etc. Okay, so if we have a look at the green, for example, which is not enabled, we have exactly the same color naming, which is primary, secondary, neutral, black, and white. And the reason we do that is the way that AT creates the variable names. So let's go back to the original one. So we end up with a AT dash primary. And if I look at the expanding on our versions for that, we've got a AT dash primary dash L dash 1. So AT primary L1, light 1. Light 2, light 3, light 4, all the way through to 6. We've got dark 1, 2, all the way through to 6. Transparent or T 1 through to 6. Okay, so we have a very, very simple naming convention. So we know what all the color names are going to be, regardless of which of these color palettes we choose. Okay, so we've got a consistency in color naming. Now that allows us to do some mapping into other areas. Now, just quickly on this, so what we've done with the primary, secondary, and neutral is we've used the shade generator in AT to create our light, dark, and transparent shades. With the black and white, we've just created transparencies because we do not need shades of black, shades of white. That's what our neutral is for. All right, so if you wanted to add a color to this palette, very, very simple. Let's call it brand color. Brand 1. Okay, press the enter key. We've got a brand 1. Let's change that to be this reddish color. That's our brand color. Okay, now we've just added a color called AT brand 1. I wouldn't do this, by the way. I'll show you next why we wouldn't do this. Then if you want to add some shades, you click on this generate shades, leave it on the default 6 if you want. It's going to create 6 light shades, 6 dark shades, and 6 transparent shades. Save to database. Oops, I didn't hit the generate shades. We've got our generate shades. Now we've got AT dash brand 1, light 1 through to 6, dark 1 through to 6, transparent 1 through to 6. All right, it just makes sense, doesn't it? I don't know if you've used the bricks color palette system, but you would have to add each of these individually. Then you have to go to each one and rename them individually. So it's not a very intuitive way of doing it. But I'm going to just show you another reason why we wouldn't do it this way. I'm going to delete that one from there. Oops, from there. Trash that with so many little icons here. Confirm. So we get rid of that from there. And I'll show you why we wouldn't do that. See, at the moment we've got the AT to prefix our AT framework color variables. Let's say we wanted to create a brand set. Let's say, I mean, some brands, I know what it's like. You get a graphic design team, marketing team, and they throw you a style guide and it's got 20 different colors, and you got to figure out how do these even relate to the brand. I like it when there's a simple primary. That's it. Primary and the shades of primary. At next step, yeah, okay, so we've got a secondary color and we've got some shades of that as well. That's okay. When we start getting into tertiaries and quaternary colors, and you've got a design set that's way too complicated that you should not be using anyway. So let's say, for example, they do give you a complex style guide. I would say we would set the primary and secondary to be the most prominent colors in that style guide. I would then create a new style guide. So I go new palette, and I'll call this brand, right? We'll call that our brand palette. And in there, let's say we're doing this for Bricks Builder, I would add BB dash. I know that some of you go, oh God, not bloody prefixes. Why do we need prefixes? I'll show you why shortly. Let's call this purple. Okay, and we're going to have another one. Whoop, 2 L's. Let's just rename that. OCD jumping in there. Okay, purple, and we'll call this orange. So you've got these weird color guide. Okay, we've got a purple and we've got an orange. Okay, let's make that purple. So yeah, make that purple there. There's maybe the purple there. And this one here is going to be an orange. So we'll make it that kind of orange. There, we've got a purple and an orange. Okay, now what we're going to have is a color which is going to be BB-purple, BB-orange. What if we want shades of the purple? We go to our shade generator, click on that, leave it on the defaults, change that, whatever you want, generate shades. Now we've got BB-purple, light 1, light 2, light 3, etc. Save this to the database, and I'm going to show you where we'd use these. Okay, let's add a section in here. We'll add some content inside that section, and we'll go back to our section. Let's say we want to set the background of that to be the brand's purple. What do? You go to your background. Now I would right click on this, because if you left click, you get the standard bricks color palette drop downs. You got to select your palette, and it's going to show all of them here, and it's just not as intuitive. So if we right click on that, we get the advanced themer version of a color picker. So this is your framework. I'm just going to minimize that. And we're going to go to our brand palette. There's our purples, and here's all of our shades, and here's our transparencies. Okay, how quick was that? So create a new palette, gave it a name, create a couple of colors, and then told it to create some shades. That is super, super quick, super, super manageable, right? So that is that done. Now let's say, for example, I'll show you why we would use the prefixes. Let's say we're going to use CSS to set our background and our typography and whatever. So we click on the CSS for that section block, and I'm just going to do a capital R tab. Look at our root block there. I'm going to put our background. Okay, now what kind of color do we want? We want a brand color, BB dash. What is, oh look at this, BB dash purple. Wow, isn't that cool? So BB dash purple D3. Okay, okay, what about our colors? We want the color for our text to be a BB dash, maybe it's our secondary. Actually, I don't think I created the other one. Yeah, let me have a look at the orange. I didn't. So we're going to do this as an L. Maybe we can make that L4. Okay, we've just set our color to an L4. I don't want the BBs. I want to use the framework one, so I'm going to use AT-primary L4. What did I do there? I messed up there. I deleted the bracket there. So I'm using my primary L4. So by using these little prefixes, we go, okay, that's our brand colors. This is our AT framework colors. So it's really easy for you to differentiate between where were these colors created, where do they belong. So we know that all of these AT ones, they belong in this AT framework or one of the variants of that. And all of these brand ones, the BB ones, they belong in the brand palette. So it's a really simple way of identifying where those colors belong. And that's consistent throughout ATF, where anything that has the AT belongs to the AT framework. Right, so there's no confusion between where they are. Now, where it's really important is that AT framework is just brick settings. It is not a separate system, a separate plugin, a separate anything. It is just a preset set of bricks settings, and we want to be able to identify those as being part of the framework. So I hope that makes sense as to why I was so hell-bent on keeping this prefix when others are going, oh, why do we need a prefix? Or can I change the prefix? Or, it just doesn't make sense to not have it for me. Right, so that's your colors. So that's how we create and manage colors in AT Color Manager, and they can easily be mapped through to variables, which we can easily identify. And then we can use our color pickers here. We can right click, we can use our color pickers. Whoops, didn't work. Why didn't you work? Something weird going on. I'm just going to hit the save and refresh here. Okay, go back to my section, background, right click now. There we go. Now we got our color. So we got our contextual framework, contextual color palette. We've got our framework set as our default, and we can select our brand from there and use those color pickers. I think this is amazing. It's certainly well thought out, and I'm happy with the way that AT works for that. So it makes colors easy, right? It does make them easy. I can't fathom how people find this complicated. But anyway, so that is that. That's the color palettes and how they're managed through this. Now, the next thing we've done, which people seem to find really confusing, is created some utility classes that basically make use of these. Okay, so what we can do is we're going to create another section there, add some content in there, maybe add a button, and let's have a look at that. So for example, here's a section. We've got some copy in there. Actually, we'll add a text link in there as well, because we color our links as well. Where our text link go? There we go. So now we've got a text link in there as well, and that's just everything set to default. We want to control the colors of this section here. We simply add the color set utility class to it, which does nothing at this stage. If we have a look at the CSS for that, we'll look at that full screen so you can see what it looks like. There's our CSS, and basically this is setting everything to variables. So we're setting colors of our background, colors of our typography, colors of our links, all that stuff using variables. Okay, so this isn't going to apply anything until we set those variables. And wherever we can, we're using a where clause to weaken the specificity of these rules so that they don't get in the way of other styles. So if you have other styles that are setting colors, these will not apply, okay? Because these are very, very weak references. If you don't have anything setting your heading colors, for example, then these rules will apply. If you do have something else, some other CSS, anywhere setting your heading color, these rules will not apply, okay? And that's how I wanted it, so that it doesn't get in the way of your other styles. All right, so let's go to so we've got an AT color set. Now we need to pick a color set. So we're going to use color set, and we can use our rollover, and that is our neutral dark one. There's our neutral. Watch the colors of the fonts. So you got the heading, the copy, the text link, all just the default colors. We roll over our neutral. Oh, look, our headings changed color. Our text has changed color. Our text link has actually changed color. You can't really tell here. And as we go through the darks, so what we're doing is that the color set, when we pick a color set with a modifier, in this case, say the neutral D3, that is the background color. Okay, the neutral D3 is the background color, and then we set some other variables to set our typography, etc. on top of that. So let's go through, is our neutrals into our lights, and when we get into our lights, our color of our text goes to darks, okay? Then we've got our primary dark one, you can see again, so actually the heading and copy are actually light versions of primary. Right? And now see our text link there, it's gone to a dark. So if we go to normal, see our text link is the blue, we go into our dark primary, and then into dark primary, and our text link color changes. Again there, see the text link changing as we roll over these. So these are sets of colors. Right? And then you get into our primaries. So what do we do with this? So let's say, for example, we set this whole set here to a dark 3. What we got? A primary dark 3, right? And then inside that, we're going to actually create a couple of blocks here. Make one red. Okay, and let's just grab, actually just duplicate that. I'm going to grab all of my content and stick it inside one of these blocks. Probably there's a wrap function here that I just haven't used. And Max seems to rack me over the knuckles. So why didn't you just right click and wrap it? But anyway, that's done. So I'm going to turn this block here into a grid. And we're just going to set that as a grid 2. Grid 2. Okay, so we've got a 2-column grid. And we've got a, why is that? Oh, I put it on the wrong place. Okay, let's go to our grid. Grid 2. Okay, we've got a 2-column grid there. Let's say this first one, we want to have a different color set. So I'm going to actually put a little bit of padding on that so we can see a bit where we're at. So I'm going to use my AT variable picker here, and I'm going to go, I want some space of small space all the way around. I could have just started typing that, or I could use the variable picker because it's contextual. Okay, now on this particular block, let's say we want that to be a neutral color set. So we do a color set, and then we pick a color set of a neutral, let's say it's our D4. There we go. So we've got a color set on the section, which is our primary D3. And in fact, if I go into that and add a heading there, and maybe some copy there as well underneath it. So our outer container, so our section is using a color set of primary D3. Our box inside here is using a color set of neutral D4. So let's change that neutral D4. We'll just get rid of that. Do it again. So we'll use that as a light, a neutral light one, neutral light 2. Actually, just go to neutral. Where's neutral by itself? The color set neutral. Okay, so we've got the white text, white text, white text. Color set neutral D, color set neutral L1, and we've got black text. So this is controlling maybe this L5. Maybe that's what we want there. Okay, I'll get rid of this other block here, and we'll just duplicate that. So we've got a grid. We've got 2 separate sets of colors applying depending on the color set that we applied. Now we decide, okay, I'm not really keen on these colors. Do one of 2 things. We go to our color palette and we can change our primary, for example, here. Let's say we want to move that towards a blue. There's a blue. I would typically grab that hex, go to my neutral, paste it in there, go to my HSLA, make sure that's on 50%, and then maybe set my maybe the 10 or 12 is my saturation on there. So it's just got a tinge of saturation of the primary saturation and neutral, so that it's not gray. And I'll show you where that looks nice a little bit soon. Okay, so there we go. We've got change our color palette there. Or we decide, look, you know what? We want to switch to a different set and we don't want to touch this color set. We don't want to touch this palette. We just want to move to a different one. Let's turn that off. Let's go to our purple color set. And now we are cooking with our purple color set. Don't quite like that purple. Let's shift that purple a bit there. We want more of that sort of bluish purple. Let's go there, grab that, set our neutral, and we've got our purple color set. And again, eventually this is going to become something that is conditional. So you can load this depending on, you know, the user's role, the logged in or logged out status, the taxonomy, whatever it is. You can load a completely different color set or color palette and apply those to different conditions. So using these colors here, it just makes sense. Using the color sets makes it really easy to manage. So let's actually duplicate that whole thing there. And we're going to change this top one here, get rid of that color set there and go color set of primary. Let's go, that was the primary. Let's go secondary. Let's go secondary D5. There we go. So we go secondary D5. Let's go to our blocks, and on that one there, we'll make that a primary. color set of primary, I don't know, where's our Ds? Primary D4. You'll notice something else here too. On our primary D4, this was what I was playing before, we've got a different background. Okay, now the reason I did that was just to show you how easy you can do this. You can do this in CSS, so you can actually set the background here, and you can set a gradient or whatever you want. Or you can just go to the background here. I think I used the gradients, gradient overlay, and I just set a background gradient on that primary D4. Now every time I apply the primary D4, my typography colors are changing, my text colors are changing there, and I get this gradient background there. Okay, so it's a really, really simple way to keep everything consistent and manageable. So I like the whole idea of these color sets. It makes it simple to get consistency in the way you're doing things. Again, it's weakly, very weakly applied. So I can go to my color here and on that particular font there, the particular heading there, and I can change that to be a secondary light if I wanted to. So it's not, the color sets are not going to override. They kind of set a baseline, and then you can go on top of that and set whatever you want on top of that. Right, so that is the reason we have the utility classes in the global brick settings. They're not required. It's just a really simple way of applying the colors that you've created using this framework setup here. Right, so that is a lot to go through. Now, the next part I'm going to talk about is how this is automatically applied to your templates. So I'm going to go back into my remove all there. I'm just going to add a section here, and I'm going to add a block. Whoops, not a div, a block. Here's my block there, and I'm going to add some buttons in there. Okay, change my block to be a row, and we've got a button. By default, when you insert a button into bricks, you get the primary style. If we go to the second one here, we change that to our secondary, change that to our light, change that to our dark. We've got 4 different colors, and we've just used the bricks UI to set them. And these are all tied to our framework. So if we have a look in the colors here and we go, actually, we don't want the purples anymore. We want the greens. Right? There's the green color set, right? Actually, we're not really keen on that primary green. Let's go to that green there. We want that to be more towards, say, this kind of green here. That sort of green there. And we want a bit more darkness to it. There's our primary there. Okay, we're going to grab our primary hex, go down to our neutral, chuck it in there. Go to HSLA, make sure that's on 50% for our neutral. And we only want about, say, 10% there. Okay, so we've just set that didn't apply. Why didn't you apply? 10%. Okay, so we've got a neutral with about 10% of the color in there. Let's just go there now. So now we've got our primary, secondary, light, and dark. Let's apply a color set of neutral to that. So we're going to go color set. And we do a color set of neutral, let's say around a D. Oh, whoops, I did that on the button, not on the section. Let's go to the section. See our neutrals here. Let's say, for example, I went for a neutral D1. It's not grey. It's kind of it's got a little bit of our primary in it, right? So if we go to our colors here, and here's our neutral, I'll show you what grey looks like. If we've set that to 0, that's just grey, right? So our neutral is grey. If we don't want it to be grey, and this depends on the color that you've selected for your primary, because different colors behave differently in your perception of their amount of saturation. So in this case, I might say 8%. And you can see that grey has just got a slight tinge of green. If the color, you can hardly notice it, you might go to say 15%. And that's got too much. That's like too much like your green. That's not neutral enough for me. So I think for this particular one, I like around 8%. Then we have a neutral that is not quite grey. There's a slight tinge of our primary in it. And I like that in my particular way of thinking in my design. I like having that tied to the primary with our neutral. And you know, we then say duplicate that whole section. And on this one, we'll just go through and see what those look like. So if we go through neutral, neutral, D1, 2, 3, you can see a little bit of tinge of grey, and then it gets to a point where it's got almost black anyway. And then in our lights, you get a little bit of green in there, just a little bit. Let's go to there, for example. So you can see these are not grey. That's a mid-grey, slight tinge of primary. That's a mid-light, slight tinge of primary. So if we go back to our color sets here, go to neutral, let's say that's on 0. These are just grey. We go on to put on 15, too much green for me. So put on even on 10, it's a little bit too much, maybe around 7. Yeah, that's pretty good for me. Around 7 is about right for this particular color. So there's my neutral with a little bit of a tinge of primary. Okay, so let's go to how does this work? How do we change our colors here and our buttons automatically change? When you install AT framework here, part of that is that you install this AT framework theme. All right. What that's doing is it's mapping all of the colors into here. So for example, in our colors here, we're mapping our primary color to AT primary, our secondary color to AT secondary. Our light is by default AT primary L5, our dark is AT primary D5. Okay, so they're mapped automatically into there. So as we change these colors here, those colors automatically change. We do not go into the theme or need to go into the theme and change those. We just do it all in the one place here. You can certainly go in here and you can update that and change those to whatever you want. But when you do that, you are going to break the connection through to this color palette selector over here. So you can certainly right click, for example, on this primary color, and you can change that there to whatever you want. But it's no longer going to be connected to the theme over here. Well, partially true. All right, now the other thing we're seeing is the buttons. And there's a few areas you need to look through this yourself because it's going to be too long a video if we go through everything. In the buttons, we have our typography here where we've got our color set to our AT BTN primary color. Okay, and this is our default button. Our background is set to AT BTN primary background. Okay, and we do that for the primary, secondary, light and dark, where we're mapping to these variables. Again, we've got the AT prefix. Okay, it's not a color variable from the color set, but it is a AT prefix, which we know that means it is an AT framework variable. It is not a variable you've created or one you've imported from a library that you've subscribed to. This is part of AT framework. So how do we know this? Because it's got the AT at the beginning, --AT-. Okay, right. Where we find those, we go into the CSS variable manager. We go into our buttons. Here's our button defaults, AT BTN. This is our radiuses, our box shadows, our outline sizes, all that sort of stuff. That's the defaults for your button. Again, that's all mapped across automatically to your theme. We want to change the primary colors. There's our primary colors. What's the color? So the text color. What's the color on hover? What's the background? What's the background on hover? What's the border color? What's the border color on hover? Really simple, right? And then we've got the outline. This is the outline version of that button. So instead of going through this here and going, oh, I go into here and oh, okay, there, and then I've got to go into my, okay, when I hover, I've got to change that color. And hunting through the UI to find your settings, you basically go to one place, there it is there, and you just set your variables. I like this way of working. Again, if this is a part of the framework that you don't like, you don't want, don't use it. Just go in here and click on these little yellow dots and disable it all. Or if you don't want any button style from the framework, click on the yellow dots on your element button. Get rid of all that styling of your buttons and style them yourself. Okay, that is the beauty of this. It is not tying you to a way of working. It's not a fixed framework. It is a starting point with a bunch of useful variables and utilities, but you decide how you use this in bricks. I will use it this way because it makes sense to me. If it doesn't make sense to you, just disable your button styling here in your theme and set it up yourself. All right. So that's about it. I'm not going to go on any more here because I don't get the confusion. I think it's actually a really simple way of working. It's a consistent way where we have a single point of truth here for our color palettes, which are easily switchable. We have a single point of truth for our colors in our variables, for our buttons, pretty much everything all in the one place. I think it's an easy way to set up your colors and manage them. So I'm going to leave it here and let you decide whether you think this is okay or whether you think that this is a silly way of doing things. But that's your decision, and you decide how you want to work.